The federal courthouse was packed as Patricia's trial began 6 months after her arrest. Lisa sat in the front row, watching as prosecutors laid out evidence that kept the entire courtroom gasping. Tax records, bank statements, and secretly recorded phone calls painted a picture of a criminal mastermind who'd used her HOA power to build a fortune while neighbors struggled to pay inflated fees. The jury listened to testimony from 38 victims. Mrs. Peterson, age 82, shared how Patricia had convinced her to refinance her paid-off home, resulting in a $300,000 mortgage she couldn't afford. Young families described paying for repairs that never happened and watching their savings disappear into Patricia's elaborate schemes. Patricia's lawyer tried arguing that she was just a diligent HOA president who made accounting errors, but the evidence was overwhelming. Recorded conversations revealed Patricia boasting about her untouchable position. Who's going to question the HOA president? She'd laughed to an accomplice. These people are sheep. As long as I keep their yards looking pretty, they'll pay whatever I ask. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all 14 federal charges. The judge, known for being tough on financial crimes, sentenced Patricia to 15 years in federal prison. During sentencing, she called Patricia's actions a betrayal of the highest order and noted how she preyed on elderly residents and young families struggling to maintain their homes. The yacht was one of the first assets seized and auctioned. The Sovereign sold for nearly $1 million, and every penny went into a victim's restitution fund. Patricia's mansion, luxury cars, and jewelry collection followed. In total, the government recovered $3.2 million, which was distributed among the 147 residents who'd lost money to her schemes. With Patricia gone, Mystic Harbor underwent a transformation. Lisa stepped up to help form a new HOA board with strict transparency rules. Every financial transaction required 2 signatures and quarterly independent audits. Board meetings became open forums where residents could freely question expenses without fear of retaliation. The nightmare that began with a stolen boat had awakened a community to the importance of financial oversight. Lisa's case became a cautionary tale that spread to other HOAs across the state. Residents who'd felt powerless against board tyranny began demanding accountability and proper documentation. The state legislature took notice and passed the HOA Transparency Act, requiring third-party audits for all community associations managing over $500,000 annually. The law also created mandatory financial literacy requirements for board members and established a state hotline for reporting suspicious HOA activities. Most importantly, Lisa's ordeal changed how people viewed their community leadership. Neighbors became more involved in board meetings, asking questions and requesting detailed reports. The culture of blind trust was replaced with healthy scrutiny. Patricia's arrest photo became a reminder that power without accountability can corrupt even the most unlikely people. Lisa still keeps her restored Chris-Craft at Mystic Harbor, but now it's appreciated by neighbors who understand its value. The boat that once attracted Patricia's obsessive harassment became a symbol of resilience. Every weekend when Lisa takes it out on the lake, other residents wave and smile, knowing that their community is finally in. The morning of the raid arrived exactly 2 days after Patricia had stolen Lisa's boat. 7 FBI vehicles rolled quietly into Mystic Harbor just before dawn. Neighbors peeked through their curtains as agents in navy blue jackets converged on Patricia's house. Agent Torres had coordinated the timing perfectly. Patricia was usually up at 5 a.m., checking the neighborhood with her telephoto lens. Patricia answered the door in her signature power suit, ready for another day of terrorizing residents. But when she saw the badges and search warrants, her face went completely white. Her hands trembled as she held the official papers, her clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. "There must be some mistake," she stammered, but the agents were already spreading out through her house. 20 minutes into the search, agents discovered Patricia's home office was more sophisticated than many corporate headquarters. 4 computer monitors displayed security feeds from cameras positioned throughout the neighborhood. File cabinets held detailed dossiers on every resident, complete with photos, financial information, and handwritten notes about their compliance levels and vulnerability to pressure. The seized computers revealed something extraordinary. Patricia had developed complex spreadsheets tracking every dollar she'd stolen, categorized by scheme type. She created false identities, complete with driver's licenses and credit cards, to open business accounts for her fake vendors. When agents found password-protected files, they discovered Patricia had hacked into residents' personal information through their HOA accounts. The most dramatic moment came when agents searched Patricia's garage. Behind the section where Lisa's boat had been hidden, they found boxes of forged documents, blank checks, and multiple notary stamps with different names. A hidden safe behind a false wall contained over $200,000 in cash, along with jewelry residents had reported missing during routine inspections of their homes. As the search continued, Patricia became increasingly agitated. She demanded to use the bathroom, but agents noticed she kept glancing at her study. When they investigated, they discovered she'd been sending messages through a hidden smartphone, alerting her accomplices. Her attempts to destroy evidence included flushing USB drives down the toilet, though agents eventually recovered them. By 9 a.m., Patricia realized her empire was crumbling. She made a last-ditch escape attempt, claiming she needed to fetch mail from the community office. Instead, she ran to her Mercedes in the garage, hoping to reach her yacht and flee to the Bahamas. But agents had surrounded her property. She was stopped at the gate, arrested while yelling about HOA presidential immunity and threatening to sue the federal government. The FBI continued searching Patricia's house for 3 more days. They found evidence linking her to mortgage fraud affecting not just 8 families, but 32 households in 3 different communities where she'd served as HOA president. Her network included corrupt title companies, dishonest contractors, and even a crooked county inspector who stamped approvals for non-existent repairs. Agent Torres estimated Patricia's total theft exceeded $2.5 million when factoring in fraudulent insurance claims she'd filed for community properties. The yacht alone was worth $800,000, though Patricia had only paid for it using stolen HOA funds. As agents loaded evidence boxes into trucks, residents finally understood why Patricia had fought so hard against financial transparency and why she'd silenced anyone who questioned HOA expenses. Over the next 6 months, Lisa's life became a living nightmare. Every morning, she'd wake up to find another official-looking envelope taped to her door. The complaints were getting more ridiculous by the day. Patricia claimed the boat's chrome fixtures reflected too much sunlight. Then she wrote up Lisa for having improper rope storage because the dock lines weren't coiled in perfect circles. Another day brought a violation for the boat's name Dickel being too visible. Lisa counted 23 separate complaints in total. Each time, she'd take photos, gather proof that everything was within regulations, and write detailed responses. The stress started taking its toll. She began recording every interaction with Patricia, keeping meticulous notes and timestamps. Her lawyer fees were piling up, but she was determined to fight back legally. The community meetings became battlegrounds. Patricia would call emergency sessions to discuss neighborhood aesthetic standards, which everyone knew meant Lisa's boat. Other residents tried to speak up for Lisa, but Patricia had a way of shutting them down. She'd quote obscure rules or procedural guidelines that made people's heads spin. Some neighbors started avoiding Lisa, afraid of becoming Patricia's next target. Things really escalated when Patricia began her daily photography sessions. Every morning at exactly 7:15 a.m., residents could see her standing at her bay window with a massive telephoto lens, taking pictures of Lisa's boat from different angles. She'd upload these photos to the community Facebook page with captions like, "Still monitoring the situation," or "Protecting your property values." Lisa tried reasoning with her one last time. She invited Patricia over for coffee, hoping to clear the air. But Patricia came armed with a 3-ring binder full of evidence. She had compiled weather reports claiming the boat increased wind resistance, theoretical studies about waterfront property values, and even photos from other marinas showing proper boat presentation. The conversation ended with Patricia promising that she would do whatever it takes to protect this community's standards. The breaking point came when Patricia attempted to force through new HOA regulations specifically targeting Lisa's boat. She proposed a new rule limiting boat age to 5 years old or newer. When that failed, she tried to change the maximum length requirements. Each meeting became more heated, with Patricia's supporters dwindling as neighbors grew tired of the endless drama. But Patricia wasn't done yet. She started documenting every coming and going from Lisa's house. She noted when Lisa left for work, when she returned, how often she used the boat, who her visitors were. Other residents began noticing Patricia's increasingly bizarre behavior. She'd installed security cameras pointed at various neighbors' homes, claiming it was for community safety. Her own house became like a surveillance center, with monitors and recording equipment visible through the windows. Something bigger was brewing, and everyone could feel the tension building toward an inevitable explosion. It happened on a Tuesday morning in mid-July. Lisa woke up early, planning to take her boat out before work like she did every week. Her coffee mug was still steaming as she walked down to the dock, but something felt wrong immediately. The slip where her beautiful Chris Craft should have been sitting was completely empty. Lisa blinked several times, thinking maybe she was still dreaming. She'd locked everything properly the night before, just like always. Her heart started racing as she ran around the dock area, thinking maybe the boat had somehow come loose and drifted. But no signs of loose ropes or damage suggested an accident. She called the marina office, but they hadn't seen anything unusual. The security guard mentioned the cameras had technical problems and were down all night, which seemed awfully convenient. Lisa spent the entire day filing police reports and calling neighbors. Everyone seemed genuinely shocked and concerned, but nobody had seen or heard anything. The detective assigned to her case seemed skeptical at first, suggesting maybe she'd forgotten where she parked it or had given someone permission to borrow it. Lisa's frustration grew with each dead end. On the second day of searching, while putting up missing boat posters around the neighborhood, something caught her eye. Her neighbor, Mr. Johnson, who lived 3 houses down, was mentioning to another resident about strange noises he'd heard 2 nights ago. When he demonstrated with hand gestures, he was pointing in the exact direction of Patricia's house. Lisa decided to take a walk past Patricia's place, trying to appear casual. As she got closer, she noticed something odd. Patricia's garage door was closed tight, which was unusual for summer. Most neighbors kept them open for air circulation. But what really caught her attention was the fresh tire tracks leading from the street right up to that closed garage door. Her heart pounded as she knocked on Patricia's door. When Patricia answered, Lisa noticed she seemed nervous, almost jumpy. Patricia immediately went on the offensive, asking why Lisa was harassing her during this difficult time. But Lisa stood her ground and asked about the tire tracks. Patricia claimed she'd been reorganizing her garage and didn't want the clutter visible to the neighborhood. That afternoon, Lisa received an anonymous note stuck under her windshield wiper. It read, "Check behind the HOA president's garage." The handwriting was shaky, like someone wrote it in a hurry. Lisa called Detective Martins and asked him to accompany her for what felt like might be a wild goose chase. When they arrived, Patricia tried to block them from looking, claiming they needed a warrant. The detective asked her to step aside voluntarily, and Patricia reluctantly complied. As they walked behind the garage, they found fresh boat trailer tracks in the soft soil. Following the marks led them to Patricia's side gate. Through the gaps, they could clearly see what looked like the distinctive wooden deck of a classic boat. The detective immediately called for backup and a proper warrant. Within hours, Patricia's garage doors were forced open. There sat Lisa's beloved boat, covered with a tarp and pushed into the far corner. When confronted, Patricia's story kept changing. First, she denied knowing anything about it. Then she claimed she was protecting community property. Finally, she insisted she was preventing further violations by securing the boat until Lisa could comply with regulations properly. As the police were cataloging evidence and taking photos of the stolen boat, Lisa noticed something strange scattered across Patricia's garage workbench. Official-looking documents with government seals were mixed in with HOA paperwork. Some envelopes had federal agency logos that caught her eye. Patricia quickly tried to sweep them into a drawer, but Detective Martinez stopped her and asked to see the papers. Lisa had to admit something seemed off about the whole situation. Why would HOA documents include federal forms? As she watched the detective examine the papers more carefully, she noticed his expression change from mild curiosity to serious concern. He made a quick phone call and spoke in hushed tones, mentioning something about irregular financial records. The next morning, Lisa's lawyer called with confusing news. Despite stealing a boat worth over $50,000, Patricia was only issued a warning. The lawyer explained that something called HOA immunity clauses made it harder to prosecute board members for actions they claim were for community benefit. Patricia told the judge she was temporarily securing the boat to prevent neighborhood disruption, while proper documentation was being filed. Lisa felt defeated, but her lawyer suggested doing something unusual. "These federal papers in her garage bother me," he said. "I think we should make a few calls." He knew someone at the FBI who dealt with white-collar crime, particularly cases involving homeowner associations. It sounded crazy to Lisa, reporting her HOA president to the FBI over a boat dispute. But the lawyer insisted something didn't add up. 2 days later, Special Agent Michael Torres sat in Lisa's kitchen, listening intently as she described not just the boat theft, but 6 months of harassment. He was particularly interested in Patricia's photography habits, her extensive surveillance setup, and the financial paperwork Lisa had glimpsed in the garage. He explained that many HOA-related fraud cases started with tips from frustrated residents. "You'd be surprised how often these situations reveal bigger problems," Agent Torres said, pulling out a notepad. HOA presidents with that level of obsession over minor issues are sometimes hiding something much larger. He asked Lisa to write down everything she could remember: dates, specific complaints, financial demands, and especially any mention of money or contracts Patricia had made. As Lisa compiled her notes, Agent Torres made some calls to his office. While stealing a boat wasn't typically an FBI matter, the federal paperwork Lisa had spotted raised red flags. He explained that HOAs dealing with federal housing funds or managing community facilities often came under federal jurisdiction when fraud was suspected. Within a week, Agent Torres returned with more questions. He wanted details about HOA dues, how the money was spent, who Patricia's preferred vendors were, and whether residents had ever complained about unexpected fees. Lisa realized she'd been so focused on the boat harassment that she'd overlooked other people's concerns about the HOA's finances. Several neighbors came forward with their own suspicions. One resident had questioned a $5,000 charge for tree trimming that never happened. Another noticed the community pool renovation cost triple the usual amount, but looked exactly the same. Patricia had always shut down these questions quickly, claiming the complainers didn't understand proper accounting. The investigation was officially opened, and suddenly the boat theft seemed like just the beginning of a much bigger story that was about to unfold. When Lisa Waters pulled her car into the driveway of her new house at Mystic Harbor, she felt like she'd finally found her perfect slice of paradise. The beautiful lake stretched out beyond her backyard, and the neighbors seemed friendly enough. But there was one thing about this community that made her stomach turn a little: the HOA president, Patricia Montgomery. Everyone in the neighborhood had their own nickname for Patricia, but most people just called her Karen when they thought she wasn't listening. Patricia wasn't your average HOA president. She'd been running the community with a firm grip for 8 years, and every single resident knew exactly who was in charge. She seemed to have eyes everywhere, always watching, always taking notes. Her clipboard was like an extension of her arm, and she carried it around like some kind of official badge of authority. Lisa had heard the stories during her house tour. how Patricia had once made an elderly couple repaint their entire house because the shade of beige was 2 tones off from the approved color chart. The funny thing was, Lisa's first interaction with Patricia seemed perfectly normal. Patricia had shown up at her door with a perfectly baked apple pie and a thick manila folder filled with HOA guidelines. She smiled sweetly as she pointed out every single rule, but Lisa noticed how her eyes kept drifting toward the back of the house, almost like she was already looking for something wrong. What Patricia couldn't stop staring at was Lisa's pride and joy. A beautiful 1985 Chris Craft speedboat that Lisa had spent years restoring. The boat gleamed in the afternoon sun, its wooden deck polished to perfection. Lisa had done everything by the book, getting all the proper permits and making sure every detail met the HOA's boating regulations. She'd even paid extra to have it measured by a professional marine surveyor to confirm it fit within the size restrictions. But Patricia's smile faltered when she saw the boat. Her pen clicked nervously against her clipboard as she asked a dozen questions about registration, maintenance schedules, and safety equipment. Lisa answered each one politely, showing Patricia all the documentation. Everything was in order, but Patricia's expression suggested otherwise. She made a few notes on her clipboard before leaving, promising to look into things further. The very next morning, Lisa found an official notice tucked into her door. The HOA had received a concerned complaint about her boat's aesthetics. Apparently, the classic wood finish created too much visual glare against the morning sun. Lisa couldn't believe it. She'd chosen this specific slit because it faced away from the main houses, and the boat was barely visible from the street. But Patricia was determined to find fault, and this was just the beginning of what would become a months-long campaign to get rid of that boat by any means necessary. Over the next few weeks, Agent Torres and his team worked quietly behind the scenes. They started with public records, requesting financial statements from the HOA. What they found was shocking. Patricia's supposed $800,000 embezzlement was just the tip of the iceberg. The FBI discovered she had created an intricate web of fake companies that all did business with the HOA. There were 23 different vendor names, but when traced, they all led back to Patricia or her immediate family. Paradise Landscaping was registered to her cousin, who had never cut a single blade of grass. Elite Pool Services belonged to her nephew, and residents started remembering that the pool truck always arrived empty. No chemicals, no equipment, just Patricia's nephew collecting checks for work he never performed. The FBI found that Patricia had been padding contracts for years. A simple lawn mowing service charged $2,500 per visit, when the going rate was around $150. Emergency repairs that never happened were billed through Mystic Harbor Construction, a company listed at Patricia's home address. Even better, Patricia had documented everything meticulously. She kept detailed spreadsheets, thinking her position protected her from any scrutiny. Agent Torres discovered Patricia's crowning achievement, a luxury yacht purchase hidden through shell companies. The 45-foot yacht, named the Sovereign, was registered to MH Properties LLC, which was owned by Harbor Holdings Incorporated, which circled back to Patricia. She'd used HOA funds to make monthly payments, disguising them as waterfront management fees. Residents had noticed line items for marine facility maintenance on their bills, but Patricia always claimed it was for the community boat ramp. The yacht discovery explained Patricia's obsession with Lisa's boat. Every time Patricia looked at that classic Chris Craft, it reminded her of what she was hiding. Her harassment wasn't just about control, it was about keeping attention away from herself. The investigators found Patricia's private notes where she'd written boat people as her biggest threat. Fearing other boating enthusiasts might ask too many questions about waterfront facilities, Agent Torres pulled financial records showing Patricia had withdrawn over $95,000 in emergency repairs after major storms that never hit the area. She charged residents for hurricane damage cleanup in a year that had perfectly clear weather. Bank statements revealed luxury hotel stays billed as HOA conference expenses, and designer shopping sprees charged to office supplies. The scope of the fraud became clearer when the FBI interviewed other residents. 8 families had paid extra assessments for mandatory home improvements that Patricia claimed were required by updated county codes. She collected thousands from each household, insisting they upgrade their electrical systems or face heavy fines. The county building department had no record of any such requirements. Perhaps the most disturbing discovery was Patricia's mortgage fraud scheme. She convinced 5 elderly residents to refinance their homes using her trusted mortgage broker, who was actually her brother-in-law. These homeowners were charged excessive fees, their equity slowly disappearing into Patricia's accounts. When one couple tried to back out, Patricia threatened HOA violations that would cost them their homes. The investigation revealed a criminal enterprise that had been operating for 8 years under the guise of community management. Patricia had stolen identities, forged signatures, and manipulated vulnerable residents while maintaining a friendly facade. The stolen boat incident had accidentally exposed a criminal operation worth over $1.2 million. Retroies.